Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in once again to the original Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur show. I'm your host, Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur. Today, I'm interviewing Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. Now, he is an inventor. He also is a scientist, an entrepreneur, a Fulbright scholar who holds 4 degrees from MIT, also including his PhD for biological engineering. He is also the inventor of email. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Shiva.
Everything there with you.
Okay, so great to have you here. All right, I really appreciate you taking out time to come and speak with me and my audience. Now, the first thing I want to ask you about, I know you've been asked this a myriad of times, I'm sure, but could you please just explain to my audience about how you're the inventor of email and the, certain people trying to give the credit to this guy by the name of Ray Tomlinson?
Look, the facts around my inventing email aren't even, there's not even a gray area.
Mm-hmm.
It's black and white. And we have to emphasize black and white. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It is the fact that there is even any controversy reveals the absolute racism and also the fact that the military industrial complex in the United States likes to attribute all great innovations to coming from war. And that's what this is about.
Okay.
Let me repeat that again. The facts about my inventing email are black and white. It's not even a gray area.
Mm-hmm.
And any person who wants to deny those facts is either a racist or believes in a very stupid way that all inventions come from war. So let's review that. The fact is that when I was a 14-year-old, dark-skinned kid growing up in Newark, New Jersey, predominantly all African Americans in a small medical college.
Mm-hmm.
By that age, even at 14, I'd worked very hard. And I had the year prior to that, I'd gone to New York University on a special program. I was one of 40 kids selected in the United States, the only dark-skinned kid. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So we should understand that. The only kid who was 14, all the other kids were 16. I wasn't actually eligible for that, but because of the strength of what I've done and my hard work and my achievements, I was accepted to that program. And at New York University, I learned computer programming, not just one language, not 2, but 7 different programming languages. And I graduated #1 in that class, all of which is documented. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
After I finished that course, that class, a very accelerated program that they give to even master's and graduate students, I was then given the opportunity to work full-time as a research fellow at what is now known as Rutgers Medical School. At that time, it was known as the University of Medicine Dentistry of New Jersey. Okay? And all of these two are also documented in pictures, in statements, everything. And then when I started working there, I initially did research on why babies were dying in their sleep. And I was combining data of 24-hour sleep patterns of babies and very complex algorithms, which you would call AI algorithms, or which were much more powerful 2D algorithms. And I made some very interesting discoveries, which I published before I came to MIT. You see?
Okay.
All right. So I was doing medical research, combining computers with biology, and I was very good at programming. And the people in that lab were 30, 40 years older than me, 50 years older than me.
Wow.
I was treated as an equal. Okay?
Okay.
That's important. Not like because I was dark skinned, because I was a young kid, they treated me as a profound situation. Because of my, again, hard work and because of my merit, I was given the opportunity to take on another challenge. Now, anyone over the age of 40, not the bunch of racists who run Wikipedia,
Mm-hmm.
not sort of snotty-nosed kids who don't really do any work, anyone over the age of 40 will know that many organizations in the 1970s and prior had 2 ways of communicating within an organization, within an inter-organization system. One was a telephone, hardwired telephones. They didn't have cell phones like we have today. In fact, faxes were just coming. But the other was a very, very complex system. It's a very important word to understand. System of interconnected parts, known as the inter-office mail, paper-based mail system. And if you looked at an office building,
Mm-hmm.
or an organization like the office of the president or the office of the queen or any one of these people, or the office of this medical school where there were thousands of offices. Each office had a boss who was a medical doctor or a researcher, and they always had a secretary. Their assistant was always a woman who was a secretary, black or white, but it was a woman always.
Okay.
And these women had a desktop. They physically had a desk made up of either metal or wood. And on that desktop, they had the first part of the system, something called a typewriter, that they would type onto a paper, a white piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, and they would type something called a memo, short for memorandum.
Right.
And the memo was the medium of communication between those offices. Now, that memo was a structured document. It had on the top, it would say memorandum. The next line would say to, and would list the person you were sending that memo to, the name of the person and their department typically. And then the from would be who was writing it. In this case, let's say my boss was Dr. Michelson. He's still alive, by the way. And it behooves people that no one has ever spoken to him, except one journalist, okay? He's alive. They want the story to go away because it exposes racism and their imperialism and their Zionism, all of it, okay?
Okay.
So the boss would go to the secretary and he would say, Alice, take a letter. And he would say to, from, and then he would say the subject is hiring Kenneth, some guy, Kenneth, okay? And he would say, dear Dr. blah, 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 let's say Dr. Bartholomew, we're thinking of hiring a new person, Kenneth. Let's say Dr. Bartholomew was his boss. And he would say, blah, 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 this is why I think Kenneth's qualified. And he would say, attached is his resume, okay?
Okay.
All right, and then he would put CC, carbon copy HR, carbon copy the director of the department, literally CC. Sometimes he would be CC, maybe his boss's boss. And what did the secretary have to do then? She had to take that paper, get another part of the system called a carbon paper, put it behind that paper, and then put another piece of white paper, type 2. So you got the original and the carbon copy. If there were 2 or CC, she'd have to do that typing twice. Or if there were 3, so on, right?
Right.
Xerox machines really hadn't come about. So all this would get done. She would write it up and she would put it in a folder, a box called drafts, DRAFTS. Sound familiar?
Yes.
There, the doctor would come the next day, look at it, redline it, say, Alice, change these mistakes. She would change it. She'd put it again in the drafts folder. You'd look at it, great. She would then put it into the outbox. Before she pulled it in the outbox, she had a big envelope. She would put it in that envelope, tie it up, and then attach, obviously, the guy's resume, literally a paper clip, another part of the system. And then a guy would come pick it up if it had to go to another building, or they had these pneumatic tubes, and it would get sent up through these pneumatic tubes. All right? Sometimes you registered the letter. You put registered mail. When the guy got it, you got a return receipt.
Okay.
And then when the mail came back, she would have an inbox, and then she would file it in folders. You get the idea? This is a very complex system.
Right.
This was not simply the exchange of text messages. That goes back to 1930, or Samuel Morse, who was using Morse code. Now, I was asked to convert the system into the electronic form. I mean, there were hundreds of little parts, address books, right? Departments, everything you see in the modern email system. It did not exist. In fact, a scumbag racist guy by the name of David Crocker, when all of this stuff went in the Smithsonian about 10 years ago, he said he had written back then in 1977, we unearthed a document. He said, wow, this is too complicated. No one could do this. So that's 1977. He was working for the military, and he had written, this is too complicated. All right, no one can do this. Well, I didn't think it was complicated. And the reason he thought it was complicated was he thought women were dumb. That was a real reason. He didn't think that women could learn these complex systems, that they could create a user interface with all these features. So they were more interested in simply sending text messages. Okay. But I had great respect for these women, you know, who were my customers. And I built the entire system in 50,000 lines of Fortran code, every feature. And it's all documented. You can go to inventorofemail.com. It's in the Smithsonian now. And I captured every one of these features.
Okay.
I named that system email was a 14-year-old kid on top of it. The term had never been used in the English language. All right. After I did this in 78, you know, you keep advancing the features. In 1980, I won a Westinghouse Science Award, which is an award that's sponsored by the Westinghouse company, which was known as a Baby Nobel Prizes at the time. And I was one of the kids to win that, fully documented. I was in the local newspaper. When I arrived at MIT in 81, on the front page of MIT, the MIT newspaper, out of the 1,000 kids who were accepted at MIT that year, like 100,000 kids apply, 1,000 get accepted. Among those 1,000, I was the only 3 of those 1,000 students who was further highlighted as one of the kids who built this email system. It's all there.
Okay.
In the winter of 81, the president of MIT invited me to his home. I was elected student body president, and he invited different student leaders. And he had heard about my invention. He said, it's really unfortunate that the Supreme Court still does not accept software patents. The idiots in Congress didn't even know what software was. They thought it was like writing music. So in 1980, which I didn't know, they had created the Computer Act of 1980, which said use copyright law to protect software inventions. My parents weren't wealthy. My parents weren't Bill Gates's parents who knew how to do public relations, even though Bill Gates didn't create anything. Okay, he stole his stuff from another guy and he put his label on it. So
right.
Okay, I had created all this, and Dr. Gray, Paul Gray, who was then also the science advisor to Reagan, told me you should use the Computer Software Act of 1980 and copyright it. I had to write away for all the papers. I had to get all the information. You didn't have PDFs. The internet really had taken off, right?
Right.
I filled everything out. And on August 30th, 1982, a 17-year-old kid gets officially recognized by the United States government by the issuance of that copyright. So I have the copyright. Ken, can you go get a copy of it? I named it email. I wrote all the fucking code. So where's the fucking controversy?
Right.
I have to be a white guy with blue eyes, blonde hair, and does my last name have to be Reinstein? Okay? That's the fucking question we have to ask. Now, being a humble Indian kid, which unfortunately dark-skinned Indians are taught to be humble, humble, humble. Shake their head like this and talk like this and take a good beating. That's what fucking Gandhi did to Indians, okay? And Nelson Mandela did to Black people, and that's what Martin Luther King did, okay? They don't want us to talk about Malcolm X. They don't want us to talk about real leaders, okay? So the darkies always get these sellout leaders. But here's a copyright, okay? What is it? Shiva Ayyadurai email. Now, because you're a dark-skinned kid, and because this was done before I came to MIT, right? And because you're trained not to, be humble, frankly, okay? Right,
not to speak up for yourself.
Right. Zionist kids are taught how to do nothing and speak a lot of shit that they didn't even do. All right. Came to MIT. I was very interested in systems. I saw that article, I remember, and I said, wow, that's pretty cool. They're recognizing me. But I moved on. Okay?
Right.
All right. Because why? I didn't even know about MIT until 2 weeks before I applied. Now, I was the number one kid in my class out of 900 kids. I'd won every award. Don't you think that the guidance counselors in my high school should have told me about MIT?
Yes, absolutely.
They didn't tell me anything because my last 2-3 years, I went to an all-Jewish high school where the Jewish kids think they're the chosen people of God. Every time I'd win an award, it would give them heartburn. The parents would get heartburn. Okay? But not only was I a good student, I was a good athlete. I remember one time after I'd won this award, my mom was in the hospital. She'd been in a severe accident. So we were coming out of the award after I got in a standing ovation. This Jewish mother, still remember her name, Greenberg, comes running at me and yelling at me and my father, oh, your son has done nothing great. My son, Eric, could have won that award had he decided to work this year, but he was a little bit lazy. All right. That kind of shit. Okay. So no one told me about MIT. I had created email. I'd won every freaking math award. Don't you think someone should tell me about MIT?
Absolutely.
The way it happened was, and I created email. I was a Westinghouse honor student. My mother always helped people, and she had helped these 2 women. One of them who'd been kicked out of her house by her husband. She was basically thrown out, and she let 2 of them stay in our basement. We had a small guest room, and she had a friend who was a wacky guy, and he'd heard, oh, he won all these math awards. He was number one here, won the Thomas Alva Edison Award. And he said, you should apply to MIT. And I go, what's that? I didn't even, and he brings me the brochure, and it had the dome, and it said Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which I didn't even know was the number one science and technology institute in the world. And he said, you should apply here. I thought it was like a mental institute because they had the big dome and
Right.
so I didn't want to go. He forced me to fill out the application a few weeks later before it was due. So I did it with a pencil.
Mm-hmm.
I got in, and then I went to visit MIT, and I've shared this story many times. I thought it was a nutty, crazy place. These people looked nuts. They looked unhealthy. They looked like, they couldn't even throw a ball. I was into, they looked nuts. So I went back and I said, I'm not going here. Then my Jewish physics teacher, she said, oh, yeah, you should go there. It's a very good place, in her thick Yiddish accent. And she had the Holocaust numbers on her. She'd been in the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
She said, oh, my son goes there. So now she's telling me about MIT. Why? Because the school gets ratings if one of the students goes there.
Interesting.
Out of selfishness for themselves.
Right.
Anyway, and then she said, oh, if you don't like MIT, you'll like Boston. It's a city. And that got me interested. So that's how I came to MIT.
Okay.
So I came there, most students said, oh my God, MIT is my dream to go to. That wasn't me. Okay.
You just heard about it purely from chance, through chance.
Purely from chance
Mm-hmm.
by some woman my mother had helped who she met randomly in the shopping store. So think about that.
Right.
Right. Rich, multiracial, aristocratic kids have consultants with their parents hired to do their essays. They probably write their SATs. In those days, the SATs were hard. I scored 800 out of 800 on my math SAT.
Wow.
When they were hard. So you're talking about a really fucking smart student who worked his buns off, who no one even told about MIT. This is how the elites operate. They don't want real competition. All right.
Yeah, they shut you out. That's right.
Yeah, and I came from nothing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not some house. You can fill in the word, right?
Right. Right.
Maybe I'll even say it if it's okay with you. Okay.
No, don't say it.
Okay. So I came to MIT and I was very interested in systems. You see, I grew up in the caste system of India, where the dark-colored Indians are treated like shit by the white-colored Indians, and that's the facts.
And I have read about that too.
Yes, and every black person should know about this, because black people think all Indians are assholes, and most of them in the United States are assholes. And I can understand why black people in the United States don't like Indians, but they should consider me one of their brothers, because the first Indian slaves, the first slaves to the United States may have been Indians.
Mm-hmm.
Indians were the first indentured servants, and some very good evidence. So we were the darkies, the slaves of India who were taken. That's who my people are. So there's a caste system in India. That's why my parents left India. Okay. Mm-hmm. I used to be given water in a different cup. You talk about going to a different bathroom, that kind of stuff. Okay. Segregation. Wow. All right. So a lot of the Indians here are actually Brahmins. They would always ask my last name to try to figure out who I was. They're racist. Mm-hmm. This is why you see most of the Indians from the Brahmin caste who support the bombing of Israel, because they're scumbags. They're Zionist hoodlums. Anyway, so when I came to MIT, there were Indians there, but they hated me. Like, what the fuck did this darkie? How does this darkie get in here? Okay?
Right.
That was the problem. But I was interested in systems, political systems, and also medical systems. My grandmother was a village healer in that small village I grew up in, and she would heal people by using an ancient system of medicine. So I was very intrigued how this woman was able to do that. She has tattoos all over her arm. She was dark, like dark. Okay. Mm-hmm. And how did this woman learn all this? Okay. So when I came, I was interested in systems. I started learning about system science. I started as a 4-year-old kid. I was reading every revolutionary I could get a hand on because I didn't like this caste system in India. So I was very curious about systems. Went in and out of MIT, did many, many degrees, 4 degrees in engineering. Graduated, won every major award. And in fact, when I was 17, 18, I burned the South African flag on the steps of MIT. Most of my friends were poor blacks and poor whites. And I organized one of the biggest protests against South African apartheid because institutions like MIT were investing in apartheid. Wow. But our protest wasn't like this namby-pamby liberal white protests, right? Which is much of what the Free Palestine protests are, because most of the liberal elites have taken over all of this. Mm-hmm. We said, look, you want to talk about apartheid in South Africa, why don't you talk about apartheid right on campus? Like the black workers and the poor white workers don't even get health care. So we mobilized the workers on campus, the custodial workers and the food service workers, and said, look, the same enemy who fucks over the South African people are the same enemy who fucks you over.
Right.
Much different than a bunch of liberal white kids talking about, yeah, free South Africa, singing Martin Luther King songs, we shall overcome. but those same kids would be afraid to go to Dorchester and Roxbury.
Right.
Neighborhoods, right? This was just a shtick for them to do. And you see that in the Free Palestine. Well, why don't you talk about end the occupation of Zionism right here in the United States, right? Many of those student protesters didn't even go to the Harlem neighborhoods in Columbia. You see, it was like a thing to do for them. And much of that was controlled by the white liberal blacks who were just wanted to keep it contained to free Palestine. They don't want to make the connection that the same enemy who commits genocide of the people in Gaza is the same enemy who commits genocide of the people in this country, poor blacks and whites. You see, they don't want to make that connection. They like everything segregated. So I came to realize that as I studied systems, that the only way any liberation has ever taken place to us, our people, which is most of us, 8 billion of us, has been when there was bottoms up movements. Militant bottoms up movements driven by the right political theory. Okay? Black Lives Matter had some militancy, but they didn't have the right political theory. Okay? That's the problem. They were abused by liberal whites and their own Uncle Tom sellouts. All right?
Right.
You must too. They don't want to talk about really building a bottoms up movement where you have to unite working people. Okay? So that's what I learned. So that's what I ended up doing. I mean, you would see me running major protests, all my life. When I graduated my PhD at MIT, I was the only student who took up a sign US out of Iraq. Half the crowd, 20,000 people, half of them booed me, and the other half, supported me. So I had always realized that it's very important to say the right thing at the right time, not when it's popular.
Right. And that's what many people do. They'll say what is popular, what they think everyone wants to hear.
Exactly. So in 2020, I was the first one who hit fire Fauci. I was the one who gave actual protocols that people could protect their immune system. I was the one who said lockdowns are going to hurt people, particularly people of color, because if they lock down their indoors, they're not going to get enough vitamin D3. I was the one who came up with a protocol for it. So meanwhile, Trump was promoting lockdowns. Trump was supporting Operation Warp Speed.
Right.
Booby fucking Kennedy was promoting lockdowns. And he stole all my material and writes a book a year later about Fauci.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Very interesting.
He's a total scumbag. Okay. The Kennedys are the ultimate of institutionalized, controlled opposition, manipulators of humanity. Okay. You see, the establishment, what I realized in all my studies, understanding systems, they have the obvious enemy, like the Clintons and the Bushes. All right. Like the absolute KKK or the Nazis and the racists. But they also have to create the not so obvious establishment, because as people start to study and they realize, wait a minute, the only way things have ever changed is bottoms up movement, and we start mobilizing independently, right?
Right.
Without the need for them, you know what they do? I saw this consistently. They create heroes from above that they shove down our throats. Gandhi was a hero created by the elites of Britain and the Brahmins, because there was a massive revolutionary movement coming up in India after 300 years of oppression. They wanted a good bloody revolution in India. That's what they deserved. Americans had a good bloody revolution. Why shouldn't the Indians get one? So that's what they wanted. And then they parachute in this guy called Gandhi with his little spectacles, with his little white stuff, talking a bunch of nonsense, like it's good to get beaten up. And, it's like bullshit, okay? He got promoted. How does this guy with a little cane shaking his head overnight be promoted? That doesn't just happen.
Right. It's all by design.
Yeah, you had backers, you were funded. And even if you see the movie Gandhi, he's in his little spinning wheel in a big freaking mansion, supported by a guy who was a total British bootlicker. So people got to study their history, okay?
Right. And that's the thing. Most people don't want to read and research, unfortunately.
They don't want to read and research, and they want to outsource their activism to someone else. Martin Luther King, as Malcolm X said, that March on Washington was a circus. The Kennedys, Robert Kennedy, another scumbag, organized crime family boss. I mean, that's what the Kennedys are. One crime family boss kills another crime family boss, and they want all poor people to feel sorry for them. We shouldn't feel sorry for these people. Malcolm X said it right. The chickens have come home to roost, okay, when Kennedy got killed. And they did, all right? But the point is that Robert Kennedy, the senior,
Mm-hmm.
was the one who had made sure that the civil rights movement was taken over by the elites through the Southern National Christian Conference. They're the ones who backed. They said, okay, we're going to make this bourgeois black guy, Martin Luther King, the leader of the black people. So they pushed him. Malcolm was never pushed. Malcolm came bottoms up. Malcolm was a real leader, okay? Because he made it very clear that we got to get off the plantation. He made a distinction between the house slaves and the field slaves.
Right.
So Malcolm was diminished. Martin Luther King got promoted as a leader, when if you really study Martin Luther King, his integrity is pretty horrible. He was banging everyone he could get. He was a drug addict. Malcolm was clean, okay? They didn't have anything on Malcolm. Martin Luther King was compromised, so they needed him. And the civil rights movement, which began as a need for infrastructure in the inner cities, that's what people wanted, infrastructure, their own ability to build their own economies. That got diverted only to talk about affirmative action, okay? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? Affirmative action was needed because Black people did get screwed for 300 years. But that's all they did. And just talking about affirmative action pitted Blacks against whites, ultimately. And that was the goal. So we have to understand that the establishment knows they decide who they're going to anoint as our leaders. They're going to anoint who's an inventor. So getting back to the invention of email, here's a problem that these people have with me. I was a great student. I'd invented stuff before I came to MIT. After I come to MIT, I was on the front page for inventing many things. Okay? I was on the front page for inventing Echo Mail, front page article, Technology Review, Fulbright Scholar for winning the award to start integrating Eastern and Western medicine. But in November of 2011, remember, 33 years later, I was a very humble guy, never wanted credit for the invention of email, although I did it. My mother, in a suitcase, she was dying of a horrible disease, had 3 months to live, called pulmonary fibrosis, had saved in a beautiful Samsonite suitcase all of those materials. The computer can know it, and everyone can go to, Inventor of Email and find it. It's all there. And the only journalist ever to look at it was this senior technology editor at Time Magazine. And he wrote an article, front page article in Time Magazine on the online edition, The Man Who Invented Email, November 2011. You can go see it. No one said anything. Prior to that, I was always called Dr. Email. You can look at the thing in the MIT Technology Review in 2000. So everyone knew I invented email. So Time Magazine did that article. And then on February 16, 2012, a month after my mom died, the Smithsonian honored me, and they put it into the Smithsonian. And a young Washington Post reporter, a young reporter, Emmy Kalawale, an African-American reporter, wrote an article saying Dr. Shiva honored as the inventor of email. That should have been an occasion for celebration. Instead, a liberal, white, racist Thomas Haig, who is a historian at the University of Wisconsin, thinking he's the one who, see, these academics like to write the history. He thought he'd already written the history of email, giving this nerd guy with a beard who looked like a nerd the credit out of Raytheon, which is a defense company, for inventing email. When he didn't invent email, he invented at best a caveman version of Reddit, the ability to add text to the bottom of a file, which they never called email. Okay? Facebook allows you to post messages. Is that email? No. Is Twitter email? No. Email is email, which is inbox, outbox, folders, all those things, right? Right. Just because you can electronically transfer text, that doesn't make it email. I created email. So they had conflated what this fool did, and he admitted he only spent 15 minutes on that to add text to a bottom of a file. I created email. I have freaking all the receipts.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. So when it went into the Smithsonian, this caused a lot of heartburn to these people because now it's in the Smithsonian. Holy shit, the world's going to see it. So he attacks me, calling me a fraud. Gawker Media, you may know this newspaper, Gizmodo, they write an article, 3 articles saying this curry stain Indian should be beaten and hanged.
Okay? Oh, wow.
Asshole, all sorts of horrible names. I'm teaching a class at MIT, the most popular elective, for free while I'm running my company because I enjoy teaching. Thousands of calls come in saying I should be fired. Okay? And I'm being called horrible names. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I just gave my material out of love of my mother to the Smithsonian. and all this stuff's occurring. And people are making jokes. Ha, ha, ha. You think you invented email. Al Gore invented email. Ha, ha, ha. It's like, are you a fucking idiot? I didn't. And at that point is when I realized, wait a minute, I have to defend this. Not for me, but for that 14-year-old dark-skinned kid who did invent email.
Exactly.
Okay? So, and remember, all of this time, if you look at my history, I'm fighting many battles. I'm fighting for black people to get into MIT. I'm fighting against anti-war protests. I'm fighting for scientists in India, whistleblowing, where I expose all the corruption. So I've always been a fighter. But it was a very interesting personal journey to realize, wait a minute, I got to fight for myself. You almost think, shit, am I doing something wrong? Maybe I didn't invent email. And it's like women who get people convince them, oh, you did something wrong. You wore that miniskirt. You did this. You must have worn that kind of shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, wow, maybe someone did invent email. Maybe I didn't do it. You can't believe the amount of abuse I'm getting on media, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, one of my students at MIT, Devin Sparks, spends like 3 days in the MIT library. So we start reviewing all the material. Prior to 78, did anyone ever use the word email? Did anyone create anything like email? And lo and behold, we find an article written by the very guy, the very racist scumbag, David Crocker, who was out there to the press. Oh, he didn't, I was there. And, I'm one of the great researchers in messaging. There's no way he could have done this by himself. And then this is the way they steal credit. They say no one person could have done this. This was done collaboratively. You find out no one person could have done this. Too complicated. Well, I did do it. I was the one person.
You're right.
So he's writing all this bullshit in the Washington Post. Emmy Kalawale is being attacked by her own editor, who throws her under the bus, and they retract the story. I mean, This is the level of crazy shit that's going on. So lo and behold, Devin finds a document written by David Crock of shit, I call him. His name is David Crock, who in 1977 had written a report saying there is no
possible way
to create this system. It's
impossible. Right.
Okay.
It was impossible for him.
For a bunch of old white dudes, okay, who were trying to solve a problem of simply exchanging text messages for the military, okay? And they didn't have any respect for women. I did. It was email that moved women from the typewriter to the keyboard. It liberated them. I moved the desktop away from the physical world to the virtual world. That's what I did. And anyone who has a fucking problem, and particularly black people and Indians, I found the most racist people are Indians. Oh, how could you have invented email? That wasn't done by you. Shut the fuck up. It's like Indians are the most white supremacists because they've been bamboozled for 300 years by the British. Only white people can make stuff. So you don't have to be white to be white supremacist. In fact, most white people, white working class people look at it and say, of course he invented email. It's obvious. And Indians in India who are Brahmins are the biggest white supremacists because you see what I'm saying? So the invention of emails is not only about me. The good thing is typically what they do is they write these histories and they steal the shit after the guy dies. The problem we have is two problems. You see, I'm not a fucking house slave. They don't like me talking like this. As an MIT PhD, you're supposed to talk like this with, 20-syllable words, and you're not supposed to call people Zionists like that, right?
Right.
They don't like that fact because the reality is I have a span of language. I can speak very eloquently. I can write the most scientific papers, and I could call you a fucking Zionist. Okay? Because I come from all these different attributes like all of us do. So they want to put people into little boxes. And the box they had me in was a good Indian. Well, I'm not a fucking good Indian. That's their problem. That's what they really don't like. They don't like the fact that I don't stay in my lane. And that's the real racism. If you're black, you must like to eat watermelons, and if you're white, you must hate all black people. And if you're a white woman with blonde hair, you must be stupid. And if you're an Indian, you must shake your head and meditate. They have all these fucking, and the people doing this are the liberal white elites who create these constructs.
Right.
That's a real racism. Yeah. So I invented email, period. And they hate when I say that. Period, period. And anyone who is poor, anyone who hates the establishment, anyone who's black, or this is the invention of email unites all of us, all 8 billion of us.
Right.
What they do, they want to make sure, you see, the problem they have is, had I invented email at MIT, it would have been absolutely fine. You see? But the problem they have is it was invented in Newark, New Jersey, 99% African Americans by a darky. This really bugs them. Now, Philo Farnsworth, to give you a data point, is the white kid who was 14 who invented TV.
Mm-hmm.
He did. You can read about it. Took him 60 years to get credit. So if it took him 60 years to get credit, and he did it not at RCA, he did it in a small farm in Franklin, Idaho. So they suppressed him too. You see, I got two things. The thing is, got a dark skin, and I did it before MIT, and it was done in Newark, New Jersey, and I was 14. You see? This is like 4 levels of oppression. But the problem they have is, I'm going to keep talking about it, and everyone here should tell the truth.
That's right.
Ahmadiyya is a racist fucking organization. Don't give them a penny. They locked my page. No one could even edit it. So you see, racism has not gone away. Casteism has not gone away. But all of this is really not about, it is about race, and yet it isn't. It's about imperialism and the notion of a few people controlling innovation. It's ultimately capitalism. That's what it's really about. Mm-hmm. They do not want anything coming outside of their bastions of power. Because if they, how much did I get paid for inventing email? 0. First year, second year, I got paid nothing. They gave me free food in the cafeteria, and that was a pretty big thing for a teenager, but they gave me access to computers and all these people. You see, you have to ask, do you have to be a white kid who drops out of Harvard to get credit for anything? And like Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, who, by the way, didn't create any of this stuff. Right? So the invention of email and what you're hearing right now should be a call to realize that those in power do not give a damn about innovation, because I was paid the 30 or $1.25 per hour. So when you add it up, maybe I got paid $5,000. So imagine if we took all this massive amount of trillions of dollars that they put into a few venture capitalists and private equity, and we gave a little bit to inner cities all over the world, to young kids. How many innovations could come? If a 14-year-old kid invented TV and I invented email, how many other innovations are possible? We suppress innovation. We have the capacity for human beings. You don't need to fucking go to MIT. In retrospect, MIT was lucky to get me. You say? MIT put their brand on me.
Exactly.
So that's what this is about. And
well, I'm glad you cleared that up. Now, I want to ask you, so what made you decide to run for the president of the United States?
Well, very simple. I'm the only one qualified to run.
Okay.
When was the last time the inventor of email ran for any office? Who should run the United States? Let's ask that question. Shouldn't it be someone who represents the people?
Absolutely.
The people of the world. I represent all 8 fucking billion people.
Absolutely.
On many levels. So who understands the plight of everyday people? Who has gone through this journey? Booby Kennedy? Come on. The guy goes bangs 28, 30 women while he's married, writes diaries, and his wife hangs himself. Okay? He speaks with a forked tongue. They take advantage of black people. They take advantage of poor people, right? Donald fucking Trump, who's never worked a day in his life, who does WWE, Worldwide Wrestling. This is all just theater to them. Joe Biden? No, I'm the only one qualified to run. I'm the only solution for America. America's headed downhill rapidly because the elites have sucked the working people of this country dry, particularly the white working class. The white working class in the United States has been so abused mentally. The American white working class in the late 1800s and 1900s was the force and women in this country were the force that created some of the most powerful revolutionary movements in the world. In the late 1800s and 1900s, there were, from that point to 1970, there were close to 250 million people who took to the streets to fight, and black people. But poor blacks, women, the white working class fought for many of the gains we have today. And by the 1920s, there was child labor. If we have infrastructure in this country, these were massive revolutionary movements. There's pictures of Times Square, which have been blotted out of history, where you see blacks and whites arm in arm in the 20s and 30s. Millions in Times Square fighting. All of that stuff has been taken away. All of the bottoms-up movements of the American working class have been taken away. International Workers' Day, May 1st. Listen very carefully. That was a day to honor 4 American workers who were hanged in 1886 to fighting for the 8-hour workday. Okay, they were hanged. 7 American workers were shot by the National Guard in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You can look it up, fighting for the 8-hour workday. The world's working class, all over the world, in honor of them, they said May 1st is going to be International Workers' Day. All right? Reagan changed it to Law Day. They completely changed today. Everywhere else, workers celebrate those American workers who were hanged. Why is that forgotten? Because they want to remove the history of people of all backgrounds unite bottoms up against them. They want to take that away. So they branded all those movements communist movements. They called them capital C communism, being run out of Russia. When the reality, it was those movements, when we had bottoms up movements that put the fear of God into the elites and then gave us many of the gains. By 1970, the liberal left took over the unions, the people like Bernie Sanders, the Jesse Jacksons, Al Sharptons, the Tulsi Gabbards, the Kennedys. And then the right wing cut off the legs of the workers by saying, if you unite, you must be a communist. Okay? So between 1970 till today, we've only had about 2 million workers taken to the streets in about 900 strikes. And if you look at the amount of wealth that's been transferred to the elites during that time, it's been around $47 trillion in wages. So this is what happens. When we fight, we win. When we don't fight, we lose everything.
Right.
This is why I'm the only person qualified to be president, because particularly if we're talking about the working people of this country. But if you're talking about the Zionists, sure, you have many choices for Zionists, for Zionist cocks. You can vote. You can vote for Booby fucking Kennedy, who basically said, quote unquote, the Palestinian people are the most pampered people on the planet. Okay. And he also said personal integrity and public integrity are two different things. That means I can go be an asshole in my personal life, but you'll have to accept me as a wonderful saint in my public life. You see, these people are convincing people that there's these two lives. Anyone can go look at my history end to end. The way I am is who I am, whether personal or public.
Right. Okay. Now, let me ask you this. What do you think is the greatest threat to democracy in the United States? And what do you think can be done to reverse the democratic decline at home?
Yeah. So the greatest threat is, democracy, if from an American perspective, is defined by the First Amendment. And the First Amendment says Congress shall pass no law to abridge freedom of speech. When you have freedom of speech, freedom to speak freely, you can have great science because you can talk about all different wild ideas. And you can do science, truth. Okay? And when you have truth and freedom, you discover what is real health. And that's why our movement is called Truth, Freedom, Health. But it begins with freedom, right? So the First Amendment is the framers of the Constitution said Congress shall pass no law to abridge freedom of speech. Well, on November 16, 2018, Congress created CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Okay. And it was unanimously voted by every member of Congress. Left, right, independent, so-called constitutionalists, and it was supported by unanimous consent by every member of Senate. And guess who passed that law? Donald effing Trump. Okay, so-called the red people, the Republican red who wants to protect us. And that law, CISA, gave the rights for government to put in direct hooks into every social media company to surveil us and censor us. And I know this because I was the one who exposed that in my historic 2020 lawsuit.
Right, when you sued, I remember when you sued about that. Yes. The whole thing with Twitter, and you exposed all of that stuff.
Exactly, long before Fucker Carlson did his limited hangout.
What did you call him?
Fucker Carlson, that's his actual name. He's CIA. He acts like suddenly he's now talking about aliens, and him and Alex Jones are, cuddling each other, right? Him and Joe Rogan are, God knows what they're doing. But the problem is, Fucker Carlson was put in by the CIA's deep state. Okay? They never tell the truth at the right time. In 2020, I was the one who exposed it. 500 million people in the world learned about it. But in America, people like Fucker Carlson, Glenn Greenwald suppressed what I discovered. They didn't want to give me again credit. Never give credit to the darkie. Never, never, never. Right? Never give credit to someone who's independent. Both reasons. Not part of the swarm. Suppress it. Wait 2 years. Then talk about it. All right? And then act as oh my God, the government is controlling, social media companies. Well, It's all out there. Go to winbackfreedom.com. My lawsuit has it documented. And also all these grifters don't want to acknowledge it because they're also part of the charade. We covered it now. Well, if the building burns down and then you come like Fire Marshal Bob, oh my God, the building's burned down. Well, the building's already fucking burned down.
Right.
I'm talking about where were you when the building was burning down? Well, I was there, was putting out the fire. You weren't. I was there fighting the fire. You weren't. Okay. So who deserves to be president? A warrior. The guy who does what he says.
That's right.
And the working people of this country have been manipulated to think it's okay to talk one way and fuck your friends and family another way. I mean, Booby fucking Kennedy had a diary documenting how rating women that he was banging. His wife finds his diary. She hangs herself. Okay? Then he does this beautiful, solemn prayer over her casket, and they act as though they're burying her in the Kennedy compound, right? Then the next day, he digs up her coffin and moves it to an unmarked grave. This is the kind of fucking people. How can you be a woman and support this guy?
Right. No one's
out there. What the fuck are you doing? Do you like to be abused, or do you want to be banged by him? What's up with you? I really want to understand the psychology. Why are you thinking about this guy when this guy, during the lockdown, said lockdowns are good? They're going to protect the climate. Okay, making up some climate change nonsense. And we can talk about that too. But I'm the only one who's put in the effort. I'm the only one who earned all his fucking degrees. I'm the only one who actually has solutions. I'm the only one who knows how to actually deliver solutions. And finally, I'm one of us. I'm not right. So there's not even a question who you should be voting for. There's not even a question that everyone should get on the ground and support our campaign. And you should go to Shiva for president. You should put our bumper stickers on your car. And you have to say fuck you to these people because they are your enslavers. And you have to get off the plantation mentally.
Right. Now, I agree. And now, how do you think we can break away from the Democratic and the Republican parties? Because people always are saying things like, oh, I have to choose between the lesser of the two evils, which is so annoying to me. But how do you think we can break away from the Democratic and the Republican Party to form a viable third party?
Well, let's talk about that. Okay. Let me just share with you. I think I can share here. Let me share with you this. Okay. So if people go to Shiva for president, I'm going to share also with our audience here. Okay. If people go to Shiva for president, you'll see something very interesting. First of all, this is our website and everyone should go there. Okay. The main thing I want to point you is there's a section here called free downloads. Okay. Okay. When you go to downloads, there's this flyer there. It says the lesser of two evils is killing your children. Okay. See this graph right here? And this is old school. Everyone can print this. It's free. Print it and go abuse the library's computers because you pay tax dollars. Print as many of these you can want, black and white. Okay. And what this flyer has, it tells you that is the policies of the swarm. That's what I call them. People go to the swarm. You'll see since 1980 till today, look at the curvature of this curve. This is the life expectancy. Now, for Black people and people of color, it's even going down even harder, okay? Right. But since 1980, they've been killing our children. So if you have a child today, your child will have a shorter lifespan than you. Just let that sink in, okay? Right. So that means this is not because of the vaccine today. This has been going on since 1960. All the policies, income inequality, okay? The policies of putting poisons in the environment. We know now there's microplastics that are ending up in men's testicles. Just came out last week, okay? Proven. They 100% of the male testicles have it, 100% of even dogs' testicles. So you are destroying human life. They eat all organic food, okay? And this is not just the Democrats and Republicans, the left and the right, and the obvious and the not so obvious establishment. The Kennedys, the Trumps, the Al Sharptons, the Sanders, who act like they're for us. They're even the most dangerous ones. And then the snakes, okay? So everyone should get this flyer, okay? So bottom line is, it's not, and if you go through this flyer, we've had to make it really easy so everyone could understand and pass it out. Who is the enemy? The enemy is the swarm. It's not any one person. It's the swarm now of a multiracial, decentralized group of elites who are geographically spread out. Black, white, brown, Muslim, Zionist, right? All of them. They're all together on it. And this video, everyone should watch. The solution is our movement. And the only way we're going to win is not through some type of party. A party is a secondary thing. The first thing that needs to occur is we need the right instrument. And that instrument is a movement. And that movement has to be driven by two very important things. The right political theory, okay? Right political theory. And that political theory has to understand how the elites think, okay? And how they're actually organized with the goal of destroying us. And that theory is called system science. And it took me, 20 years to learn this. I used to teach it at MIT. The elites learn system science. George Soros teaches it. Henry Kissinger knows it. Well, I know it. My trajectory was to use that knowledge to help the elites screw us all over more, right? I didn't do that. So I took all of that knowledge, and if people go to truthfreedomhealth.com, I teach that knowledge.
And please tell us about that. Truth, Freedom, Health, the movement. Please tell us about that, as well as your recently patented supplement, MV25.
Yeah. So let me. Since you asked, first of all, I'm going to bring up this website again. So let me go to everyone. When you get time, I'll bring it up right now. There's a very important website. It's called Truth. It's not Truth, Freedom, and Health. Truth, Freedom, Health, and I'll explain why we don't put an and. Okay, it's very important. Okay. So if people go to Truth, Freedom, Health, like email, like Cytosolve, and I'll talk about that, is a innovation. So Truth, Freedom, Health is a system, no different than emails. Many things. We have a course. We teach people the foundations of systems. The same class I used to teach at MIT. Okay, the same class. But I've made it accessible to everyone. You don't have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, number one. But what do we teach here? Well, what I uncovered was that, and people get books, they get papers. I uncovered a set of 9 principles that govern every system in the universe. Your body, right? My body, the universe, political systems, engineering systems, the room that you're sitting in, everything. And that's called system science. So once people understand this, they have a framework to pretty much understand everything. And there are 2 videos. If you go, you should watch the swarm video.
Okay.
Maybe I'll play this for you. Maybe we can take a little break so I can get some water and play this if you have time.
Okay.
What is Truth, Freedom, Health? And then here, we are now a global community. And the people that come to us are very smart people. People are beyond left and right. People are beyond Democrat and Republican. Essentially, people who don't want to be screwed anymore. Okay?
Right.
These are stories. You can see they're carpenters, homeschoolers, electricians. It's actual working people, not some bougie people, not people, some liberal dweebs. Okay?
Okay.
And if you look, here's an example of a guy who said, I jumped from supporting the Kennedys in the 1980s and 1990s to Obama in 2000s, then to Bernie in 2010s, and then to Trump in 2020s. I had no direction or guidance. I stayed with Trump for 4 years, thinking I could, quote unquote, fix him. That plan worked out well. Operation Warp Speed, Fauci never fired, vaccines, masks, Ivanka, Jared, Hillary out free, Assange in jail. Remember, Trump printed $6 trillion for the elites and Jeff Bezos. If it wasn't for the Truth for Health movement, I'd be now working for Tulsi Gabbard. Thank you for the Truth for Health movement for their intervention. They liberated me from addiction to these abusers. Get educated to be abused. So we have a history of winning because we figured out how to crack the code. Here's the bottom line. What is Truth for Health? If you look around on the internet, there's billions of videos, right? There's so much information. But has information made our lives better? The answer is a big no. Here's the data, right? 350 million people are on anti-anxiety medications. 300 million people are on depression. 51% of people feel hopeless, of children. 40% of people in the world want to overthrow their governments. 2.5 billion people are obese. This number is going to be 4 billion in about 2 years.
Wow.
2% are completely confused on what to eat. And 95% have health problems, with 1/3 having 5 ailments. So information is not making us healthier or more truthful, right? Or more freer. So why? Because the reason is that information is fed through the lens of ignorance. Ignorance, what is ignorance? Ignorance is never teaching people the whole puzzle, right? You don't get to see the whole elephant, but you're like the blind man touching the pieces of the elephant. So, Fox News gives you one piece, CNN gives you another, right? And so on. So, and then people jump from Obama to Trump. By the way, 57% of people voted for Obama voted for Trump, okay?
Wow.
Then after this, they get very confused. then they get desperate. Oh, I'm going to take a gun and shoot people. I'm going to do terrorism. Or they say, well, I'm just going to move to a farm and I'm just going to, join some cult and just take care of my family. Or they get into this left and right. You see, they divide people into these 4 buckets. And the people who are driving this ignorance are the people who we precisely think are fighting for us. Booby Kennedy, right?
Mm-hmm.
This Indian dude, okay? It's a complete bullshitter, okay? It's obvious to know who's the obvious criminals, right? The Nazis, the Klan, right?
Mm-hmm.
But these people are who the establishment creates, right? I could put Gandhi here. I could put Martin Luther King here. The establishment owns these people. They tell them to say the right things, so people are camouflaged from real people like me and you. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Right.
They want everyday people. And the only way out of this is this: knowledge. What is knowledge? Knowledge is different than information. Knowledge is having the ability to interconnect pieces of information within a framework, you say, to find wisdom. And wisdom gives you clarity. And with clarity, you start becoming a decentralized warrior scholar. That's what we're creating. But it requires you to let go of the old system. You have to be willing to get off the plantation.
Step out of the matrix.
You got to get off the plantation.
That's right.
Off the plantation, you're going to, Tucker Fucker said some good things. Alex Jones said some good things. These people are saying, quote unquote, good things. So you keep like a Velcro attached to them. So you don't build a bottoms up movement.
Right.
So that is what Truth from Health is. Now we have about 500,000 people globally.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And these people have come to us because they're done. They're very smart people. And a lot of what we do is get people off their butt to start moving. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
To start getting people activated. The biggest thing is people say, oh, Dr. Shiva, I love everything you're doing. Well, get off your butt. Help us go collect signatures.
That's right.
Go to Shiva for President, get a bumper sticker, put it on your card. It's $5, but 100,000 people see it. The only way forward is for us to have our leaders, our Malcolm X's. You see, our people. And you have to stop asking dumb questions. Oh, what do you think about Donald Trump? What the fuck do I think about him? What's he done for you? He's fucked you. What do you think about Booby Kennedy? What has he done for you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, nothing. Tulsi Gabbard says she's against war, but she's the one who's all out for invading Iraq. She was all out for bombing Palestine. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And Bernie Sanders has never held a job. The guy's a couch surfer. He's never worked a day in his life. Why don't we look to people like me who actually work every day, who work 18, 19 hours, who come from one of us? And that's why you have to overcome your own brainwashing.
Right.
That's what this is about. So you deserve, the only solution for America is Shiva for President. And I say that with not any humility anymore. I had to overcome humility. I say that with absolute truth. Pure, unadulterated truth.
Absolutely. And I absolutely agree. Now, one more question, but I also want you to speak about the supplement, the MV25.
Oh, yeah. So, all right, another one of my critical innovations, I keep inventing platforms. Email was a platform. Echo Mail. I created the technology during 1990 to 2000, which originally to automatically read and analyze and route email for companies who are getting lots of emails for helping customer service. Cytosolve is my latest technology. And Cytosolve is a very powerful technology that eliminates the need for animal testing, and we're going after every major disease. So can I just play a video?
Sure. How is it really long?
It's about 1 minute to 2 minutes.
Oh, go ahead, please. Yeah, go ahead.
So this will describe what MV25 is, but
Okay.
MV25 was created using my technology platform that I created at MIT to look at all the different products in nature and find the right combination that can alleviate pain and inflammation. 500 million people in the world right now have osteoarthritis. I think I have to do this. I'm going to share my screen over with you.
Okay.
You should be able to hear the sound. Let me do this. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so now I think if I do this, so this is a quick video that'll explain MV25, and I'll talk more about Cytosolve. So here you go.
Okay.
Millions of people suffer every day from painful discomfort and swelling, but most pain medications come with harsh side effects, and many alternative supplements have little scientific backing. That's why we at Cytosolve created MV25. MV25 was formulated using the Cytosolve computational systems biology platform, a technology for precision and personalized health invented by Dr. Shiva during his doctoral research at MIT. This formulation is the result of computing trillions of potential combinations of biomolecular interactions derived from thousands of peer-reviewed scientific papers published across 4 decades by 68 research institutions to discover an optimal synergy of compounds that downregulate biomarkers of discomfort and normal swelling.
Hi, I'm Barbara Ann. My hands would cramp up so that I couldn't hold cards or knit or crochet, and they would go like that. And I'd have to use this when I played cards with my grandkids, and I started taking that MV25. After a bit, I was able to hold cards in my hand, very, very little cramping, hardly at all anymore. MV25.
Hi, my name is Sandy. I'm a Taekwondo instructor. I tore my ACL during Taekwondo. I had a lot of pain and limited mobility. I've been taking the MV25 for about 6 months now. After the first week, I noticed a big difference. After the second week, almost literally no pain.
My name is Jeremy, and I suffer from a lower back problem. Hurt my back at work years ago, and I can go to the chiropractor, do all kinds of different things, and nothing seems to help. And I decided to try MV25. I didn't notice a difference immediately, but within a few days, the pain went away, and it stayed away. I've continued to take it, and even when I do things that I shouldn't do, it seems to go away a lot quicker than it ever did before.
MV25 is certified clean, 100% non-GMO, made in America, and GMP certified for good manufacturing practices. MV25 is Cytosolve optimized, which means that this formula has been engineered to maximize benefits while minimizing toxicity based on current research curated by Cytosolve. As the science advances, so will this formulation. This is our promise. Order online at mv25.life. Consult your doctor before taking any supplement or medication and use as directed. MV25.
All right.
Yeah, so the reason I wanted it, the video says it all, but at the bottom line is what we did was we created a very powerful way. So the as that video shared, remember I said one area I was interested in was politics, and that led to building Truth, Freedom, and Health, which is a platform. The other was this area of health. So out of that, 2 platforms came out, Systems Health. I just ran a workshop this weekend, and that workshop is educating a new type of health educators, where they understand how the body is a system, they understand the language, and people can go to systemshealth.com and they can get more information. But the other part, and that integrates Eastern and Western medicine together. Okay. Every doctor should take it. Anyone can take it. Okay. But it's a professional certification program. And then you can go start your own educational business. But Cytosolve came out of my PhD work, which was to really understand in these ancient systems of medicine, people are combining all this stuff. Like you go to African medicine, Indian medicine, Celtic medicine, Native Americans, they take different herbs and they combine them and they say, hey, this works for you. But how are they doing that? Right? What's right? And a lot of these indigenous systems are dying off. So Cytosolve allows us to use the computer to look at all the different papers published on a disease like osteoarthritis. There's about 100,000 papers published. And each of those papers has a little piece of the puzzle. It's like we're like the big jigsaw puzzle person, right? We gather all those pieces, we put it together, and we figure out what's going on in osteoarthritis. And then we use the computer to mathematically model that. Then we can take different ingredients, like, oh, what's this stuff in orange? What's this stuff in chamomile, right? And we find all these compounds, and we're able to literally do the alchemy on the computer. And that's how we created MV25. I've been helping a lot of other companies do this for 10 years, and I realized, like, why don't we actually do this ourselves for us?
Okay, right.
So it took us 2 years to find these 2 very particular compounds. When you put them together, it reduces pain, it reduces inflammation, it reduces all these things. But instead of us just claiming it, like Joe Rogan has been claiming some product does something and he's being sued right now, We actually went and did the research. We had to publish a paper. Then we went and got a US patent. That takes a lot more effort.
Right.
Because you have to prove it versus just saying, oh, I'm Joe Rogan, buy this shit from me, okay? Because I
Right.
keep saying it over and over again. So we've actually had to do the honest work. These people never have to be honest. They just use their networks and their bullshittery, okay? So MV20. So now we have discovered another very set of interesting herbs and combinations that are good for brain health. Another interesting one for increasing testosterone in men. As people know, men's testosterone levels are dropping like this, okay, throughout the world. So we're using a very powerful technology, no need to kill animals, using existing science, combining Eastern and Western approaches to validate these combinations. So Cytosolve is the really one of the dreams I wanted to do when I saw my grandmother doing this. So I've done that with all these 4 degrees from MIT. I wanted to make sure we could smash these caste systems, these systems of oppression. That's truth, freedom, health. So I'm very excited because now all we need to do is for people to get off the plantation and know that there is one of us who's figured out solutions.
Absolutely.
That's what we need to do. But we need people mentally to get off the plantation.
Right. That's where it all starts. Now, I have about 15 minutes before I have to get ready for this other interview. But I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on reparations for the descendants of slaves in this country?
Well, here's the deal, right? The reality is that the Black people in this country were abused, okay? The reality is also that largely the establishment abuses many people. Like, people need to know that the Irish, a lot of people don't know, were the first colony, the first abused people by the British Empire, okay? Indians were the first, Indians from India were the first indentured servants. And then you have the Native Americans, okay? So there's reparations that need to be paid by the swarm, not just white people, the swarm.
Right.
To all of these people and the people they abuse right now, okay? The issue is how are we going to get those reparations, okay? And those reparations are only going to be gotten by us building a bottoms-up movement. Now, one of the platforms I have in my campaign is one way to do that is Harvard University has about $100 billion endowment. Harvard should liquidate itself because every economic collapse, every oppression, every degeneration of humankind can be brought back to some professor at that institute. Okay. So my thought would be, let's start in one place. All these people at Harvard who talk a good game, like they want to give reparations. Well, why don't you, first of all, shut down Harvard, take all of its land, and let's split that up. Let's start right there. Okay.
Right.
Everyone, the poor white people in Cambridge, the Black people who got abused, the Native Americans, and all of their assets should be seized because they are still, manipulating people. They manipulate a lot of people all over the world, and they give Nobel Prizes to these fools. So yeah, I think we should do broad reparations for all working people, everyone. And that's happening, but it's not going to happen without a massive movement,
Right.
And the ultimate reparation is working people should be paid their absolute wage, right? So Black people stolen wages, and Native Americans' land was stolen. The Irish peoples were abused, right? They were just shipped all over the world. The Indians have been abused, but still to this day, now we have a multiracial aristocracy of people, all who suck Zionism running the world, okay? All of them. So all of those people must pay reparations, all of them, to all of us.
Okay.
All of them. I think it should be broad. Reparations for all.
And that starts with a bottoms-up movement.
That's the only way we're going to get reparations. Yeah.
All right.
But 2 universities must be shut down. Oxford University and Harvard University must be shut down and made museums of oppression. We should be able to walk through there and see all the people who oppressed us. I can actually see pictures of Elizabeth Warren. This is what she did. Okay, here's a picture of this guy, that guy. They should be museums. But all of the, I just took one of our visitors here. The land from Harvard Square to Central Square is all owned by Harvard, from Central Square to MIT, right? All of these big universities should be shut down. You don't need them anymore. All they do is run real estate endowments. They have a university, as some front, right? It's like a crime one of those organized criminals. They run like a laundromat in the front,
Right.
doing something else. They're running this thing called a school, but all they're doing is running other real estate exploitation businesses.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I surely appreciate you coming on here, Dr. Shiva, and take your time out. And thanks so much for telling us about Truth, Freedom, Health, the movement, your Truth, Freedom, Health movement, as well as MV25.
Yeah, we actually have solutions, and I appreciate. We should do it again. I really enjoyed hanging out with you. You're awesome.
Well, thanks. So are you. And listen, I will have you back on here. I will absolutely have you back on here one time.
You? Queen Shakur or
just Queen Ahmadiyyah, or some people just call me Queen.
Okay, thank you, Queen.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for coming. I really appreciate you. All right, so have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone. That was a wonderful woman, a real woman.